come up with. We're going to start taking a look at this, as we often do in our handicapping, taking a look at the race based on the early pace. And in other Kentucky Derbies, we've seen a lot of early pace. We'll often see a stretch-out sprinter or miler heading into the Kentucky Derby. We don't really have that this year. There's only one horse who is a proven commodity on the front end. And I'll begin with Anthony as we ask Anthony a little bit about how you see the pace of the Kentucky Derby.
Well, the central question seems to be what are they think they're going to be able to do with Stormello, or what can't they do? I don't think there's much chance to change the running style here. I think he's a go from the outside position. I'm a big believer, and we'll talk about some other horses down the road here, that when you try and compromise what an athlete wants to do in its most comfortable, natural way, you can change it, but the result I always feel is going to be worse. I'd like to see Stormello go. I think that's what the horse wants to do. I think that it won't be as gut-wrenching on the pace if he were to do it. I think his camp is basically sending out a red herring here. I think you look around and you're like, you know, this isn't the type of year where 3 or 4 horses are going to be on the engine. It's like I draw outside, I clear everybody, I drop over, I can then settle into the first turn. I think that's what they should do, and I think that's what will eventually happen regardless of what the quotes say.
And gentlemen, anything else on pace? What do you think?
Oh, I think Stormello is the key to the early pace, and if he wants the early lead, I think it's his. He is exceptionally fast away from the gate, so that won't be an issue for him. The fact that they opted for post 17, I think certainly does play into the fact that they may be opting to change his tactics heading into that race. Curlin drawing down inside his post 2, I think he's got to show a fair amount of early speed to try to maintain some position in there. The 3 horses to his outside are ones that tend to drop back, so that should help his chances a little bit. But I think from post 2, with his speed, he has to be forwardly placed.
I think Stormello is going to go for the lead. I think when Teufelsberg drew into the race, it helped provide what's going to be an honest pace, I think. I don't think it's going to be a crazy pace, though, by any means. I'd like a horse who's maybe sitting in that second punch that's kind of stalking off the pace. And I'm not really a pace figure guy. I like Beyer figures. I'm not really an early pace figure guy, but I looked up some guys on the internet this week who do follow pace figures. Dean Arnold has a blog on the NTRA site. He puts together his own pace figures, and he combines them with a final race figure for a race. And over the years, he said that according to his figures, he likes to see those combined figures on his list between 208 and 220. And when he put the figures together for this year, he came up with Hardspawn having a couple of the best figures in the prep races so far this year. He was on top of the list. No Biz Like Showbiz was right underneath. Stormello fit into his criteria. Interestingly, though, Curlin was a 191 according to his figures. And again, this guy says he likes between a 208 or a 220, so he put Curlin outside his key factors in pace figures. So you keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, internet, great resource for information. Daily Racing Form has now started those Moss pace figures, which I've kind of been following slowly. I like to kind of reverse engineer, so I'm going to take a look at see how the Moss pace figures do after the race is over. But you can pull up the Kentucky Derby past performances free from the Daily Racing Form site with those Moss pace figures. So this is the first year you'll have those available. So it might be interesting to throw into your handicapping.
And one other factor that we always tend to talk about when we're talking about the Kentucky Derby is the series of preps. Obviously, you've seen all of the races that most of these horses have contested. And typically, we have a series in California, a series in Louisiana over the wintertime, Florida, a couple of races in New York as well, and the Bluegrass in Kentucky as we're winding down the prep season. And this year has been a little bit different. Typically, a lot of these horses would have 3, maybe 4 preps into the Kentucky Derby. This year, we've got a lot of horses and leading horses as well that have only raced twice. And one of the ways that we normally sort out some of the class issues here is to look at things like which races do you think were better. I know our panelists last year all did like the Florida series, even if they had some questions about Barbaro and his 5-week layoff. The fact of the matter is this year has been a very strange season for preps. Any particular opinion from the panel? Well, I guess we'll start with you, Kyle, in the center, about which one of the prep races or a series of prep races that you felt were stronger this season.
I think The California races were by far the weakest of the group. The Great Hunter and the Robert Lewis beating Sam P. and then coming back in the Santa Anita Derby with Tiago nailing King of the Roxy. I think those two races out the west were the weakest of the bunch. Really hard to tell what to make of the Kentucky race, the Bluegrass, just because of the way that it was run and the oddities there. Obviously, there are some major players that are going to come out of that race, but how that race is going to shape up, I don't think we're going to know until about 6:10 on Saturday afternoon.
One thing I'd also like to add, I think there's I forgot to mention the pace. I think there's a horse very much hurt by this whole scenario. I think that's no biz like showbiz. I think with the blinkers added, I think that's the horse that wants to pick up the blinkers at about the half-mile pole. I think he's in a bad position because I didn't like what I saw in the Wood Memorial and how it'll transfer in the Kentucky Derby. On to the prep races. I agree with Kyle that the West Coast were the weakest, with one addendum. If the West Coast runners themselves aren't very strong, no one is going to ship there, so they have no ability to have their races get any stronger. You're not going to hear too many guys shipping out west to run in the Santa Anita Derby. I think those races were poor. I think a couple horses might run well out of those races, but what I've been saying for 3 months on the Handicappers Report, I am now absolutely convinced by, and that is this is the best Kentucky Derby in 20 years. The races, the preparatory races, including the weekends when we've had multiple races, have had multiple serious contenders in each one. This has been the most thoroughly exciting preparatory season that I can ever remember. The only sad thing is they don't do it very often. But the Louisiana circuit, the fairgrounds has just come up and up the last couple of years in their program. Oaklawn Park was just about knocked out of it until their centennial in '04, and all of a sudden the Arkansas Derby and the Rebel Stakes have become two major players. The Wood Memorial, thankfully, is standing on its own as a one-race prep trail, if you will. I'm very excited about all of the regional type of final. Scat Daddy winning the Florida region, you know, he was very impressive. He's going to go off the 5-week layoff. I do think 2 horses in California I do expect to run well in the Kentucky Derby, but I do agree the prep races as they were pretty weak because I didn't think there was any depth this year in Southern California.
Although to the defense of Southern California, as Anthony was talking about this, it did dawn on me, horses like Great Hunter, who of course was based out there, and several of the other horses that Doug O'Neill has, as well as Stormello, were based in California, but they shipped out to race. So their absence from those big races, the fact that Great Hunter ran in the Bluegrass rather than in the Santa Anita Derby, which certainly looked like slimmer pickings, is a little bit to the defense of the California horses because their trainees did do very, very well.
I just want to mention one more prep race that didn't get mentioned that I think by the end of the year will be in the top 10 races just as far as competitiveness is the Tampa Bay Derby, which I think has stepped up over the past couple of years with the reconfiguration of the Gulfstream track not being able to run at 1 1/16. I think a lot of trainers now are shooting for the Sam F. Davis, the Tampa Bay Derby, to get a more traditional stepping stone into the Derby, and with Street Sense and any given Saturday hooking up down the stretch, a nose photo finish. You know, it's seldom that you get the race that lives up to the hype that race did this year.
And I know Tampa Bay is your favorite racetrack after Saratoga, so I'm not surprised to get that plug in. But interestingly enough, it is true. I mean, last year by this point, a lot of people were negative on Bluegrass Cat, who completed a very nice exacta, and he had come out of the Tampa Bay Derby as well, and obviously proved himself in Grade 1 company throughout the remainder of the summer.